Let's look at the 15th halacha. Okay, the challah breaks. One of the challahs broke. I think I mentioned this also. If it was im ad shelo esir lechem al shulchan nifrasa lechem pasul. And by the way, they point out you should read as all the bread. Okay, one of the lechem aponim. How many lechem aponims are there? There's 12 of them. One of them breaks. Okay, before it was time to remove the lechem aponim from the table, from the shulchan. That's over here. I added the word kol because that's the way they understand. Mikol alechem, okay, pasul. Okay, kol alechem is pasul. One of them broke, it ruins all 12 of them. Vedo maktir lavet abazichin, and therefore you don't burn the frankincense that's in the bowls. V'im achar she'yisir lechem nifras. But let's say the Kohanim successfully removed the breads from the shulchan and put on the new bread. One of them is broken. Halechem pasul maktir lavet abazichin. It's still, the lechem is still now pasul, means they can't eat it, but you could still burn the frankincense on the mizbeach. So I guess this happened. There were some Shabbases where some or other the Kohanim were told, sorry, no lechem upon him today. Something happened. Okay? Higia zman alechem lasiro. It's time to take the bread off the table. What time is the time to take the bread off the table? Well, Rashi above said that it's chatzot. Midday of Shabbos, that's when they do it. And it says, le'el, I wrote the note, halacha 4:11, what does it say? It's time to burn the frankincense after the 2 lambs of the musaf. Now, the 2 lambs of the musaf, what time did they do that? Well, after Shachris, after the Tamid, and by the end of the 7th hour, which also we're going to discuss this Sunday in Jerusalem. Okay? Usually that's what they did. There's not a lot of musaf on Shabbos. Let's say you had a musaf of Rosh Chodesh. So how many additional animals is that? Another 12 animals, right? You got 2 bulls, 2 rams, 7 lambs, and a he-goat as a sin offering. That's a lot more korbanos going on in the middle of the day. Shabbos is just 2 more lambs. Okay, it's around midday. Okay, so Rashi says it's chatzos, but here it says after korban musaf. So Rambam would say lav dafka chatzos. Okay, the middle of the day, whatever it is, it's time to do that. Now, rezek kamisha hisiro vim nifras alechem maktira bazichin afal pishalo perek hama. What does that mean? So, if they get to the point when normally in the base of Mikdash they were already burning the frankincense, and then the bread broke, so they would burn the what's it called, the frankincense, okay, even though he didn't take apart the marechet. Marechet means the way they had been set up, okay, and with those I'm forgetting my words here, the tubes, the sticks that were holding between the bread, that's the marachet. Marachet means a stack of 6 breads. Okay, then take it apart. Eventually, the Kohanim, by the way, did have to break the bread. There's a point afterwards. They go to wherever you're going to eat the bread, and they have to break it, because that's how you eat the bread. What do they say here? You should know also, in the temple, how do they know when it was chatzos? Sundial? Yeah, they had a sundial. Okay, a sundial is very consistent. That's one of the basic things you do is you'll be able to mark every single day where chatzos is, because even though, what's the difference? Any place on earth you could build a sundial. The sun is always exactly in the same direction at chatzot hayom, right? Midday, astronomical noon, you could tell where it is. It's right there in the middle. The only difference is if it's, let's say, December 21st, so the sun is very low in the sky over there. And if it's June 21st, it's very high in the sky. And every single day of the year, the sun has its own unique, I guess, route across the sky. You can almost tell between one day to another, it's hard to tell. But even over the course of a week, you can actually see that the sun is significantly lower. Okay, and that's where it is. But if it's cloudy, there's no way to tell. A good cloudy day, like today, if your sundial isn't working. So you have to pretty much approximate when chatzot is. That's the way they used to do this, by the way. If you have consistently cloudy all day, you're going to be, struggling for time. Nowadays we have clocks, but in the olden days, it was a cloudy day. It was basically, your guess is as good as mine what time it is. You only knew it was like early in the morning because, it's a little bit darker. And as it gets toward evening, and even then, if it's the right kind of clouds, there's really no difference in the lighting from sunrise to sunset. Right? It's consistently gray. You don't even have a shadow. Okay. So watch out. Nitma echad min starim. Bein lifnei Torah, bein lachar Torah. One of the sidarim, okay, that means one of the stacks of bread, right, has now been contaminated. Oh boy, that's kind of hard. Bein lifnei Torah, bein lachar Torah. Whether before they burn the frankincense or afterwards. O shenitma echad mina bazichin. Or one of the bowls of frankincense has been contaminated. So they treat the tame ones like they're tame. They'd be disposed of. And the tahar ones are eaten. Okay, each one is treated like its own thing. They're separate now. Okay, so I guess that ends that's the fifth parak. Let's go into the sixth parak. What they do in the temple on a regular basis. They don't have a lot of commentary on this thing, so this is good. We could be romantic about this. Maseches Tamid ends with the line, this is the way the Tamid used to be done. This was the way they did the service in the temple back in the day. The house of our God, may it speedily be rebuilt. So let's familiarize ourselves with what should be done in the temple on a regular basis. Because what was the question we got today? Someone asked, when Mashiach comes, a very Tamid fellow asked the question, when Mashiach comes, hold on, we have a question coming in. Where does the chat questions? Oh, there it is. Hold on one second. What is the difference between Amma and Shifcha as used by uncles? I missed it. Okay, well, you'll see the video on YouTube. Can you rewind that? No, we'll rewind it afterwards. Okay. It's very interesting to see this. What were you saying? Yeah. He asked, when Mashiach comes, will all the Jews have to leave Chutz La'aretz? Well, I don't know, but were they halachically obligated? They're halachically obligated to leave Chutz La'aretz even without Messiah coming. The Mashiach's job is to ingather the exiles. Is he going to tell, I order all Jews to come back to the land of Israel right now? Okay. I said, my basic feeling is, I told him, if they're not back already and they're not coming, then, maybe a lot of people will be encouraged, but they won't have to come out. A lot of people will stay behind. How do I know this? Because that's what history showed. When Jews are redeemed, a lot of them just don't show up. So when Mashiach comes, barely anybody's going to actually believe in him as Messiah. He's going to have very few followers among the Jewish people initially, and no one's going to listen to him. Just like now, it's been time to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash for a long time. It's been time to go visit and daven at the Beis HaMikdash. How many people are doing it? It's been time to wear tchelis. I have my shtick now is I ask people just like take interest in their tzitzis, and I look it over very carefully, and I put it up against this chair, which is blue, and I look very carefully. I say, there's something wrong with your tzitzis. They're like, what? The one of the dots came out? I'm like, no, your tzitzis are all white. I checked it. Look, see? They're white, perfectly white. Put them against a blue background. Not a single blue strand here. What's going on? Your tzitzis are deficient. Okay? Rav Shechter says that the Prima Gadim holds that you have an opportunity to do mitzvah Mishneh Musa and you just don't do it, then it's actually Bal Tigra. Okay? You're reducing the mitzvah. That's a prohibition. So if you have the opportunity to have blue tzitzis and choose not to. So I told them, just like you see here, I tell people, we're going to go on a pilgrimage, by the way, first thing Sunday morning. See you there. Okay? Sunday at 7, God willing. And what's going on? The opportunity is there. Who's coming? Every day now they're just waiting for it. We have so many divine opportunities. I wonder what Rabbi Soloveitchik would say. He said, with regards to the founding of the state of Israel, there were 10 divine knocks, 10 opportunities that God gave us. Kol dodido fake. God is knocking. If that God was knocking then, what's he doing now? He's bashing down the door. He's knocking us on the head. He's taking us. He's got a baseball bat like right there. Wake up. You have the opportunity now to take over all parts of Eretz Yisrael and finally get rid of your enemies and rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. You should know, someone pointed out that the current status on the Temple Mount, which is imposed by the government, they just wished, they're very happy this is like this. It's an agreement with the Jordanians. What are you going to do? The Temple Mount is run by the Waqf Yimach Shemam V'Zichram. May they die soon and disappear from this earth. So they're run by the Jordanians, right? How long is the Jordanian regime going to last? It's next. By the way, its days are numbered. Why? Because that's the way all these things work. It works for a generation or two, and then, it's going to collapse. So there's going to be whatever took place in Syria and other places, and there was even the Egyptians had their own revolution. Okay, it doesn't last. The Jordanian regime is going down. So hopefully, this is the best thing that can happen once that regime is gone. So then the status quo on the Temple will change. There won't be a Waqf anymore, and we could go ahead with Judaism. But my feeling is that the deep state, the people who are in control of the country, will somehow find some other mortal enemy of ours to take over on the Temple Mount and not allow the actual Orthodox Jews to do what they want. Why I say actual Orthodox? Because Orthodox means people keep the Torah, Shabbos and Kashrus and things like that. But for many Jews, the Torah, they don't know that Torah also informs their politics, how they're supposed to run a country. Like mainstream Haredi Judaism has no concept of how Jews should run their own country. They expect, there's a terrible thing happened. There are people who expect Tzahal should defend our city. We're citizens, so Tzahal should defend us. But you don't believe in Tzahal. You don't believe in the army, so you can't have it both ways. Okay, whatever. Yeah, okay, back to this. We're hoping to see the temple rebuilt speedily in our days, and it's in our hands. It's our responsibility. Okay, so if Jews are not taking the opportunity, it's their own fault. It's not that God is stopping them. Seder avodot hatmidot b'chol yom kachu avodot hatmidot. Why is that interesting? This section of halacha is called the Temidin. So Temidin is referring to the korbanot. Korbanot is masculine, and avodot is feminine. Okay, and tamid doesn't mean a constant thing. Tamid means consistent. Okay, as we said before. Kachu samuch la'aliyat shachar yavo ha'mimuneh she'al ha'piasot v'yakish al ha'azara. Before, okay, just before la'aliyat shachar or amud shachar means before dawn. Shortly before dawn, the one appointed he's the one appointed on the lottery, so that means deciding which Kohanim do what. He's the one who counts the fingers. He goes and he knocks on the door of the Azara. Yakish al Azara means at the gate there. Ufotchim lo, and they open for him. Who's in charge of opening gates? Who's at the gates on the outside? Leviim. And whose job is to open the gates? Leviim. But the actual, I think the front door of the temple itself is opened by Kohanim. Okay? Leviim are shoarim. They're at the gates. Okay? And they open for him. Umevalashin et kol azara. And they inspect the entire azara. What's a balash? That's an inspector nowadays. Okay? Mevalashim. Okay? Bal shanut. Uma'amidin. Okay? Bal shanut is not the same thing. Okay? Bal shanut means being talking about katonti and things like that. Okay? Yeah. And why is that? Valashim. The shorish is bet lamed shin. Balshan, the shorish is lamed shin nun. Okay. Yeah, where's the bet come from? It's one of those other like Aramaic things, like in lish tachrer. Where does the shin come from? The shaf'il form. Okay, yeah. So this is one of those that they added a bet. You know what? Yeah, it's a bafel form, I guess. They do exist. And they put the ones in charge of making the Kohen Gadol's personal mincha offering. Remember, the Kohen Gadol is the chavitin. That means it's like a minchas chinuch. It's offered half in the morning, half in the afternoon, every single day for the Kohen Gadol. So the Kohen Gadol himself doesn't actually do this. There are other Kohanim who are in charge of doing it. The only thing that has to be from the Kohen Gadol, it has to come from his pocket. And once again, not literally his pocket, it means his funds. Okay? All the Kohanim who are on duty have already dunked in the mikveh. Just to start the day, the first thing the Kohen has to do is dunk in the mikveh so he can put on his Kohen outfit. So all the Kohanim are actually ready before dawn, dressed and bathed. What?
And it's not connected to Yom and prior to Shkia. It's just normal Tevilah.
Yeah, it's a regular Tevilah. And they don't do it in the special mikvos that the Kohen Gadol uses that's actually in the Azara. It's in the Beis HaMoked, a place like under Har HaBayis. Okay? Somewhere in the mikvah, kosher mikvah that they have many mikvahs there, and they get dressed in their dormitory. They go to mikvah and they get dressed and they're waiting there. Okay? They're already kodem sheyavo amumuneh v'lavshu bigdei kahuna, and they've already put on their priestly vestments. We amdu b'lishkat hagazit, and they go and stand in the chamber of the hewn stone, which is the headquarters of the Sanhedrin. V'afis payas rishon v'shini. Then they do the first lot. That's when they do 21st finger, number 1 and 2. That means the first round, the second round. We is kol chad bimlachto, and each Kohen earns his privilege. Okay. By the way, the Trumas Adeshin happened already. We read about that. So, okay. So that was beforehand. So now they're going to decide who's going to slaughter the Tamid, who's going to bring this up, who's going to do that, who's going to bring the Ketores. Everybody has to know his role beforehand. That's assuming there's more than Kohanim. Pointed out that you could imagine that one day there's not enough Kohanim on duty, and it's cold and rainy outside, and the Kohanim might want to split it up. It's like, even though I'm going to be catching the blood, you're going to do the slaughtering, I'm going to catch the blood. We then need people to take over. That's enough being outside. We're going to have a lot of rotation so we could warm up. Okay, so the guy who won the Trumas Hadeshen, so he's going to begin. He said before that, like I said, the Trumas Hadeshen is something that they often had to do earlier. There were some nights when they're doing Trumas Hadeshen at midnight, right, or during Ashmores. So they had ways to decide this beforehand. So he does the Trumas Hadeshen, like we mentioned, and then the rest of the Kohanim clear the ashes, those who want, right? Machlokas were shown how they did that. And then it's time to set up the big pyre. The main pyre, that means putting wood on the Mizbeach. The second pile. You look, we showed on the map, previous video, you could maybe has a map there showing it, right? You see it? Yeah, good. Then he brings up 2 more boards of wood, and he puts them in the Marach Gedolah in order to make a bigger fire. Okay? More fire. They go into the room, the chamber of the vessels. And then they pick out all the service vessels that they actually need for that day. Okay, I'm sure that not everyone was exactly the same. Different artisans have, I guess they have artistic discretion. By the way, I think that King Solomon, he made extra menorahs, right? The menorah has to have kaftor and perach and gavias. But beyond that, the exact shape of those things, there's artistic discretion, right? So I would imagine there's no one way to make it, just like artistic discretion, how exactly to do the shulchan. We said Y's or V's or whatever, or parallel lines. There's a lot that goes into this, okay? So they build a new shulchan. Second Temple, they had 3 menorahs. I don't think they're exactly the same, okay? Their weight. Matter of fact, I think it's a good answer to the kasha that have the dispute historically. The menorah had straight or rounded arms. So it seems from all the evidence that we have from people who were there, it had rounded arms. So the Rambam drew straight arms. We hold like the Rambam. Maybe there's artistic discretion in regard to these things, different ways to round the arms.
And also, if it's being made during Maccabeen times with sticks,
yeah,
it can't exactly be that.
Well, whatever. But when they finally got gold, and they might have fixed it. Yeah, obviously when they had to make a makeshift menorah, they couldn't round it. Okay, so they would go in and take the kalim. So they had to figure out which ones to do. By the way, why were they inspecting the Azara? For Tuma. Okay, a bird might have come and dropped a dead rodent, or a cat might have gotten in and dropped a dead rodent or a dead lizard. That happens all the time. Around here, you can see it. So that's a Tuma right there. So something you have to avoid. And if someone were to get into the Lishkas of Kalim, I mentioned 2 years ago, how is it that all the Kalim are Tameim? They say that there's a case where all the Kohanim are Tameim, or all the Kehilas Tameim, or all the Kalim are Tameim. How do you have it all the Kalim are Tameim? Someone died in the Lishkas of Kalim. Okay? If someone died in Lishkas of Kalim, all the Kalim are metal. That's it. Now they all have Tuma. The base of Mikdash is pure. The Kohanim are pure. The people are pure. You don't have a single knife or cup that's not Tameh. So you have to do the service Betuma while you're busy sprinkling everything. Day 1, you have to sprinkle everything with the paraduma. It'll take a whole week to purify everything. So for a whole week, they're going to be doing the service Betuma. Okay, or unless they get new kalim, they're not Tameim. Okay. By the way, that's what could happen. That's what they're referring to over here. So they take out the kalim. Next, umashkin etha tamid, and they give the tamid something to drink. It's an animal. It's a lamb. Why do they give it a drink?
It makes it
Easier to skin the animal. The Kohen who won the privilege to slaughter this animal will now bring him to the base Mitbachayim and going to bring him there. Mitbachayim, we said that's basically the area to the north of the Mizbeach, where there's hooks and other things and the rings in the floor, so it makes it easier to process the animal there. And following him are the Kohanim who won the privilege to bring the various parts of the animal onto the Mizbeach. They basically cut off the leg and the head, etc., like we saw before. And they wait there until it's time to open the gate of the Heichal Gadol. That means the main door of the sanctuary. Okay? The Ulam was always open, but there's a door within the Ulam. Okay, so yeah, that's he did it. And then two kohanim go into the actual temple. One who won the privilege of cleaning off the inner altar of the ashes that were from the coals of burning the ketores. And the other one who has to ready the menorah. The one who's cleaning off the inner altar is doing so at the time the fellow who's slaughtering the Tamid is doing so. It's around sunrise. And the one who receives the blood throws the blood on the altar. After he throws the blood, the one who's there in the altar prepares and lights. Rambam says, remember, it's not just Dishun is getting it ready, taking out the old ones. Meitiv is lighting, according to the Rambam, lights 5 of the lamps. And the 2 of them leave the Heichal. Rambam said that, lights 5 lamps first, and then another 2. I'm not saying candles. Why? Because not properly candle. Candle is like a solid piece of wax that, can stand on its own. These are lamps. It was a vessel that contains oil, and it has a place for a wick, It looked like basically Aladdin lamps on top of the menorah. It wasn't just a cup. Nowadays, how many people do this? When you light a Hanukkah candle, a Hanukkah menorah, or a menorah Chanukkatit, or a menorah Hanukkah, not a Chanukiah, you have, what do they have? They give them out here. You have a cup that you fill with olive oil and this metal thing in the middle that holds up a wick made out of cotton. That's not what they did in the Beis Hamikdash. They had actual lamps. Okay, like the Rambam says, a lamp is a vessel that could hold oil and has sort of a channel there where the wick went. Like I said, think of Aladdin lamps, Arabian-style lamps, so that they had a way to point. So all of them are pointing toward the middle, and the western one itself was pointing to the west. It was the middle, but it was sort of pointed to the west. Okay, it wasn't just a plain, symmetrical, perfectly circular from the bird's eye point of view, symmetrical cup of oil that we now have in our standard menorahs. Did the Rambam believe in a menorah, by the way? The way the Rambam wrote, the menorah that he mentions, we're going to talk about this also on Monday. If the Rambam had a menorah, your menorah would actually depend on how many people have in the family. 5 people in the family. So that what the Rambam mentions is a menorah with 5 branches, light all 5 the first night. And they get a second menorah of 5 branches for the second night. And by the 4th night, you're lighting 4 5-branch menorahs. If the Rambam would have menorahs. No, that's not halacha. We saw that. We're talking about individual lamps. The idea that you have to have a menorah and they have to be in a line and all the same level is non-halacha. And also which order, we said this last year. There are, assuming now you have a line of lamps in your menorah, do you arrange them in this way or arrange them that way? And do you light them this way or do you light them that way? And how many opinions exist? 4, all of them, because nisht kain halacha. Okay? The point of Hanukkah candle, remember the Rambam says 1 candle per household. Right? That's the basic, ner ishu veso. So it's just the idea that we use menorahs or Chanukiot is very new in Judaism. It's not recognized by halacha. Okay, let's see the next halacha here. Yeah, so the Kohanim are moving along. Remember, they're doing this. Are they saying anything? Is there anything the Kohanim have to say? Any prayers that they utter when they do this? So elsewhere in the Tosefta and the Mishneh, they say that there's a bracha. Hey, Kohanim, when they do things, they say brachas. It says a Kohen who first, eats a mincha, says the bracha, about on these things, and Shechianu if it's his first time. So there are brachas. What is a Kohen's bracha? Asher kiddushan b'kedushato shel Aaron. Right? Those brachas exist, but they're not mentioned here. But that's the only thing the Kohanim would be doing. They wouldn't be stopping and uttering prayers. Yeah, that's not what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be doing the service exactly as God said and focusing on that. Make sure they do it right and have the proper, mindset. Those who are at the base mitbachayim, so what are they doing? They're now skinning the tamid, which is a lamb, and they're cutting it to pieces. Everyone who earned this right, basically, he leads this piece of the animal up the ramp. What does it mean? They place them, each piece, from halfway up the kevesh on the west side. Okay, there's a halfway point and below on the west side. And if there's a musaf, those are on the lower side of the altar, of the ramp, but on the east side. Okay, that means Tamid on the left because the ramp is on the south side. So halfway up the ramp, and the lamp is on the south. So on your left, which should be west, that's where the Tamid is. And on your east, if you're the coin going up there, it would be on your right. How wide was the kevesh? We didn't actually see it. It was quite wide, but I don't think the Rambam actually mentions exactly that the kevesh is against the wall, the top surface of the altar. Is it against the entire one? I think so. So it'd be like 20 amos wide. So
Um, if you had people falling off of it, wouldn't it be?
kind of narrow. Well, originally, remember the altar kept getting wider. Originally, it was more narrow, and it doesn't have handrails. Okay, so if people are jostling there and they're running, and there's korbanos in the way and stuff, yes, it becomes dangerous. It's not like a common thing. You should just know how tall was the altar. It's 10 amos. That's not a joke to be on such a high place without any guardrails or anything like that. Okay, and also going up the altar. So it's a little bit tricky. Okay, let's continue reading this. The shel Rashi Chodashim no al mizbeach milamala ben karen lekaren bimkom hiluch raglei konim kedei lefarsamo shu Rosh Chodesh. We're talking about a regular musaf. Most common musaf was Shabbos, but if it's Rosh Chodesh you actually have to. We've seen other halachas also. Rosh Chodesh you have to get the word out. So in this case, they put the musaf of Rosh Chodesh all the way on top, but between the two horns of the altar. Okay, where the Kohanim normally have to walk, there's an area like a perimeter around the roof of the altar where they don't have fire going, so that there's like an amma wide area for the Kohanim to actually walk around. So they put the pieces of the UMusafin there. By the way, it's a lot of them. Okay, in the morning we're talking about there's one lamb, one tamid on the west side, and if it's Shabbos, there's two lambs on the right side of the ramp. The UMusafin of Rosh Chodesh we just mentioned, that's a lot of animals, and it's two bulls. The most basic is two bulls and two rams. It's a lot bigger than two lambs. And another 7 lambs. So it's a lot more that's taking up the space on top of the altar. Kedei lefarsamo shu Rosh Chodesh, so that people know it's Rosh Chodesh. By the way, most people don't have a calendar. They don't know it's Rosh Chodesh. They didn't hear in shul that they announced Rosh Chodesh is going to be this week. And the answer was, back in the day, Rosh Chodesh was decided then and there. That was the whole point. There was actually flux. If they weren't announcing Rosh Chodesh, people would have to know that, it's not Rosh Chodesh. Today's just the 30th of the outgoing month, like we said last week. And that's where they salt them. There's no shiur on the salt. One piece of salt is enough. Okay, 1 grain of salt, but they would salt them properly. Rambam said before, how much do you salt the meat? As appropriate for an actual piece of meat that size. If you wanted to eat it properly, how much? If you had this piece of meat, you're doing a leg of lamb, right? You're cooking it properly to serve to the king. So how much salt do you put on the leg of lamb? A certain amount. That's what you're supposed to do. Okay. Uvozakin melach al gabei kevesh afilu b'Shabbat. And they even do this on Shabbos. What is the proper word? Bozakim means you spread it out. Okay. Take some salt, like that guy who dropped the salt like this. Why would you have the havamina you're not supposed to do on Shabbos? It's some sort of tikkun. Why are they putting salt on the ramp? Okay. By the way, it says bozakim melach al gabei kevesh. They put the salt on the ramp. Okay, not on the korbanos. Of course, you have to put salt on the korbanos. Okay, right? So this is the ramp. Why are they throwing salt on the ramp? Yeah, so that the ramp is not slippery. Okay, it helps even when it rains. They're using rock salt, by the way. So it rains or whatever it is. You're talking about a smooth ramp. You want to have some traction there. Kohanim are barefoot, by the way. Okay, so you can imagine if it was cold outside. Said find some of the discomfort of walking there. You put some salt on there, it'll feel warmer and it'll make it less slippery. Okay, yeah, sprinkle salt. The afal pi shamelech chotzeitz bin raglehim uvein hakevesh. Wait a minute, they can actually feel the salt is intervening between their feet. Remember, Kohanim have to be barefoot so that their feet are directly touching the stone of the altar and of the temple's I guess the floor. When they actually have to be walking on the kevesh, that's not an avoda. Walking on the floor. It doesn't say they spread salt on the actual floor of the temple. Only on the kevesh they spread salt. Where they get all the salt? Maybe there was a storage area of salt there. They had to have salt. Salt was on every single. What korban got salt? Every korban. Okay, al kol korbanecha takrivu melach. Okay, not just the mincha. We learned from mincha also. It says, and by the way, every single korban needs a little bit of salt. And we're going to finish with this last halacha, like we said. Right, got to get home. By the way, there's food now. You brought the hot stuff, so don't leave without it. And after they bring the limbs of the animal, the different pieces of the animal up to the ramp, mitkansim kulan lishkata gazit. Then all the Kohanim gather once again. Maybe it talks about Levim also. There are Levim here present, but so far, have we seen the Levim have to do any work yet, aside from opening gates? No, because the Levim's main job is to guard the gates, be the gatekeepers, and to sing. And they're not singing yet. They go to Lishkas Agaz again. The Memuna says, say the first blessing. What are they referring to? Kriyas Shema. Okay? And they say the bracha of Avat Olam. Not Yotzer Or, Avat Olam. By the way, Vilna Gaon points out, in the Gemara Brachas talks about there's two girsas, Avat Olam or Ava Rabba. It seems that Nusach Eretz Yisrael in the ancient ways, just like Minhag Sfard, it's always Avat Olam. And that's why he says that's what he did in the temple. The Vilna Gaon also has it. Your Sephardic sitters, like Hasidic sitters, and actual Edonim Mizrach, and Vilna Gaon sitters, and Nusach Eretz Yisrael has it always as Avat Olam, not Ava Rabba in the morning. Okay? So it says, Waseratha Dibroth, and they would say the Ten Commandments, Ushma, Vayayim Shemoah, Uvayomer, Emeth V'yatziv. Okay, that's what they'd say. They skip the Yotzer Or, and they're saying the Ten Commandments before Shema, which is something that mentioned before. It used to be that was part of the service for most people, right? It was stopped because of the minim. And the bracha that we know is Emes V'yatziv, that's one right after Shema, and Ritzei, part of Shmon Esrei, Ritzei and Sim Shalom. With Shabbat, Mosifim bracha achat, v'hi sheyomru anshe mishmar yotzei l'anshe mishmar nichnas. Okay, the blessing that the Mishmar Yotzei says, the outgoing watch of Kohanim, this family, says for the other family, Misha shikein shmo b'bayit hazeh, yishakein b'nechem, ava ahava shalom u're'uth. He who has domiciled his name in this house should also plant within you. In Hebrew, it's the same verb, so it works. L'shakein, okay? Give you, not domicile within you, don't give residence to, okay? Love, fraternity, peace, and friendship, okay? So that's how it should be also in our days. And I guess we'll talk about this more next time. Questions, comments, complaints? Well, I'll take your questions, comments. You want to complain, go somewhere else. Yeah. Yeah, it's all basically at Hanitz. They start at Alos doing all these things, but remember, when did the assumption is, why do we daven at, like the Rambam says, why are we davening Shachris at sunrise? Because that's when they're basically doing these things. Right? I mean, it's hard, by the way, to know exactly when sunrise, unless you're actually looking at the sun. You can't see it. You need a lookout, and if it's cloudy, you won't see it. They didn't have the precision that we have. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah, it's around sunrise basically, and you see that. By the way, their davening wasn't like our davening. Either way, there should be a lot of peace. We should live to see the destruction of Israel's and God's enemies. Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, W'nisachon. Be good.